The day before our engagement, Zach Foster's beloved ex, Janice White, blocked my way. She wore a red dress and looked completely different from her usual frail, sickly appearance. Smiling, she made a bet with me. If you don't want your engagement with him to succeed, then it won't. If you don't believe me, Miss Wynne, just wait and see. Sure enough, the engagement didn't go through. Zach received news that Janice had a depressive relapse and attempted suicide. He completely lost his mind. While the guests had already arrived outside, Zach was inside the dressing room, yanking off the tie that matched his black tuxedo in a fit of agitation. He grabbed his car keys and, as he walked out, tossed a line back at me. Sorry, I have to see her. I'll explain everything to Grandpa Wynne when I get back. My heart turned half cold. With my makeup only halfway done, I stepped in front of him and blocked his path. If you walk out that door today, we're completely finished. Eyes reddening, I stared at him. Zach, I could let it go any other day, but do you even realize what day today is? It's our engagement day. Annoyed, he furrowed his brows and snapped at me. Ren, don't be ridiculous at a time like this. This is about someone's life. Enough. An engagement can happen anytime. I already agreed to marry you. What else do you want? Don't forget, it was you who begged me for this engagement. I stared at him in disbelief. Since when did the alliance between our families turn into me begging him? So this is how he really felt deep down. He didn't want to waste another word with me. He pushed me aside and strode out of the room. His assistant rushed after him in a small jog. I nearly stumbled and fell. The makeup artist and the stylist hurried to support me. They exchanged nervous glances, but I no longer felt ashamed. He had depression. He attempted suicide. He needed someone. After all these years, what's one more time? The stylist hesitated, then carefully asked, Miss Wynne, do you still want to change into the dress? I looked at the wedding gown hanging in the dressing room, custom-made a year in advance, worth millions. Without a second thought, I said, change. The engagement ceremony proceeded as planned. Guests waited for a long time, but we never appeared on stage. Quiet murmurs began to spread below. Did Zach Foster ditch her again? Ren Wynne really has no shame. He doesn't love her, and she still clings to him like that. Zach and Janice were true love. Janice just wasn't as lucky. She didn't have a rich grandfather like Ren. If it weren't for the Wynne family, Zach probably wouldn't even glance at her. I heard everything and gave a cold laugh. True love? When Zach made a critical mistake years ago, Janice was the first to cut ties with him. But after my family bailed the Fosters out without hesitation, she came crawling back, pretending to be depressed and suicidal. Zach, you can't be so greedy. You can't have it all, reap all the benefits, and still play the victim. I took the mic, lifted my luxurious gown, and stepped onto the stage without hesitation. I spoke clearly to the elders of both families and all the guests present. First, thank you all for taking time out of your busy lives to attend the engagement ceremony between me and Zach Foster. Zach and I have known each other since childhood, and both of our families have always been close. We were supposed to step into marriage with the blessings of our loved ones. Unfortunately, Zach is still unable to let go of his past with Miss Janice White. Despite our engagement, he insists on going to see her. Since that's the case, I'll do the honors and let him go. I now officially declare our engagement void. The room exploded into chaos. Everyone began whispering. Zach really went to find his ex? On such an important day? Is he insane? I heard old Mr. Foster never liked Ren and only agreed to the marriage for the alliance. But still, not liking her is one thing. Chasing after another man's ex is just, wow. My grandfather was furious when he heard that. He stood up and pointed directly at Zach's grandfather, shouting, So this is the fine grandson you raised? Do you think Ren only has one grandfather, and that gives you the right to bully her however you like? Don't forget, it was you who came to me asking for Ren to marry into your family. Zach's grandfather, sitting in the seat of honor, was utterly humiliated. His face turned ashen as he slammed the table and yelled at his son, Get that unfilial son of mine back here right now. Let me catch him and beat the hell out of him. Zach Foster's parents kept apologizing repeatedly, pleading with both elderly men to calm down. They promised they'd go bring Zach back immediately. Among the guests at the engagement party, one man seemed to be enjoying the show. Lounging lazily with a glass of red wine, he watched me with a faint, mocking smile. Once again, he was getting a good laugh at my expense. Every time I was humiliated because of Zach Foster, he'd been there, witnessing it, and ridiculing me. But this time, I didn't want to compete with him anymore. I locked eyes with Dylan Ford. This engagement had taken months of effort and preparation. The venue was already set up. If we didn't use it, it would be a waste. So I turned to Dylan and said, "I need a groom right now." "Dylan Ford, do you have the guts to come up here?" Everyone was stunned. All eyes shifted to the man sitting below the stage, the charming, arrogant second young master of the Ford family. Dylan was Zach Foster's cousin, his aunt's son. He was known for driving flashy sports cars and living freely. His parents had passed away early, and no one could control him. He never got involved in the Foster family business either. Zach, on the other hand, had always been seen as the future heir of Foster Enterprises. Well then, let's show him that anyone could take his place. Dylan raised his eyebrows, the corners of his lips curling into a small smirk. Under the elegant lights, he slowly stood up. "Miss Wynn's invitation? It would be my honor." Dylan shed his usual careless demeanor. Looking sharp and composed, he walked up onto the stage under everyone's watchful eyes. Just like in the past, he reached out his hand to me. With a graceful motion, he accepted the ring box I handed him, opened it, and took out the diamond ring with his slender fingers. He slid it smoothly onto my middle finger. The entire process was seamless, almost sacred. Then he stepped closer. I didn't know what he was about to do until, the very next second, he wrapped one hand behind my neck and kissed me, deeply, forcefully. The kiss was intense and lingering, completely different from his usual flippant personality. He was serious this time. So serious that I could barely breathe. The guests burst into gasps and screams of excitement. Champagne popped, confetti exploded in the air. He leaned in close and whispered by my ear, his tone casual but laced with amusement. "Ren, you should have picked me a long time ago. But hey, better late than never." I saw the wicked and joyful glint in his eyes. Zach's parents were panicking, chattering nonstop. How could this happen? They were furious. Ever since their daughter died years ago, and the old Mr. Foster brought Dylan back into the family, they'd tried everything to exclude him. And now they had to watch him steal their son's fiancée? Old Mr. Foster slammed his cane and shouted, "Enough. Zach disgraced the family name. Aren't you embarrassed enough already? It's our family that owes Ren. Whoever she chooses to be with is our family's privilege." My grandfather snorted coldly and didn't even let them stay for dinner. He kicked them out on the spot. Originally, all the people in Zach's camp had gathered to support him, but seeing how things had turned, they quickly started cozying up to Dylan instead. Of course, I hadn't picked Dylan just to help him out for nothing. That same day, I laid it all out for him clearly. If he helped me push through this business partnership between our two families, I'd help him win control over Foster Enterprises. My family ran a pharmaceutical business, but I had always wanted to branch into something new. Something young people today would actually enjoy. A health drink brand tailored to modern tastes. That's why I had been working on a collaboration with Dylan, the beverage magnate of the Foster side. But the board at Wynn Corporation had never believed in me. They were all waiting for me to fail. If I could successfully finalize this collaboration between our two families, I'd finally have the results to slap those old relics in the face, those who thought I was just some little girl with no real skills. Dylan's deep black eyes were fixed on my face. I had no idea what he was thinking or how much he had actually heard. I shot him a glare. He silently smiled, then leaned in and said gently, "Ren, shouldn't we be thinking about going on a honeymoon now? It's not like we're getting married yet." "Honeymoon? Seriously?" I huffed. "Did you even understand what I just told you?" He shook his head. Typical. He never bothered with the business side of the Foster family, so it'd probably take him a long time to catch up. Forget it. I'd help him. Just as I was about to sit him down for a full explanation, he suddenly pulled me into his arms with one strong motion. Due to the momentum, I ended up pressed tightly against his chest. His nose was practically touching mine, and those deep, magnetic eyes pulled me in, until the next kiss landed right on my lips. "Teach me, Ren," Dylan said softly. "If you teach me, I'll learn." "Don't," I instinctively pushed him away. I was only planning to use him to get back at Zach Foster. I hadn't intended to let this fake relationship turn into something real. But before I could finish that thought, my voice was swallowed by his kiss. His lips pressed against mine, dizzying me completely. My whole body went weak. The next thing I knew, I was being lifted into the air. He scooped me up in one swift motion and started walking toward the bedroom. Afraid of falling, I instinctively wrapped my arms around his neck, my legs clinging to his waist. Dylan gently laid me on the bed. He knelt on one knee beside me, his warm breath brushing against my cheek. Lifting my chin, he looked at me with that signature glint of mischief in his eyes. "Ren, the best revenge on a man is to forget him completely." I met his gaze, thinking over his words. Maybe he had a point. We were both adults. There was no need to pretend we were still playing innocent. I closed my eyes, expecting him to go further, but he didn't. Instead, he pressed a kiss to the center of my forehead and whispered, "But I'll wait until you truly want this." Then he pulled up the blanket beside us and gently covered me with it. Just like coaxing a child, he lightly patted my head. "You must be exhausted today. Get some rest." I opened my eyes, speechless, and kicked him. He burst into laughter, the kind that echoed through the room for quite a while. Then finally, he settled down, grabbed another blanket, and lay beside me quietly. 3 days later, Zach Foster finally remembered he had a fiancée. He called me and asked, "When are you coming back? To our home?" I almost laughed out loud. Our home? What home? I bought the house, I decorated it. He didn't contribute a single penny, and yet he had the nerve to ask me that. His voice sounded oddly hollow on the other end, as if filled with resentment. "You took everything from the house. Does that mean you're not coming back? You even took the bed. Am I supposed to sleep on the street?" He got it wrong. I didn't just take everything, I sold it all. I even sold the house. The realtor hadn't had time to change the locks yet. Tugging down the brim of my sun hat, I took a sip of my drink and replied lazily, "Why don't you go back to your beloved Janice? You two can squeeze together on her rental bed. If she tries to kill herself again, at least you'll be there in time to save her. Otherwise, when the wounds have already healed at the hospital, what's the doctor supposed to do? Die of laughter." All these years, it was always the same tricks. Depression, suicide, no originality whatsoever. But Zach was stupid enough to fall for it every single time. Mentioning Janice was like flipping a switch. Zach immediately blew up, just as expected. On the phone, he started yelling, trying to lecture me. "Our problems are ours. Why are you dragging him into this? Ren, I thought your thing with my cousin was just a game. I'm busy. I don't have time to come pick you up. You better take the step down while you still can. Don't come crying when there's no way down left." What a joke. Who gave him the right to act like he was doing me a favor? Before I could respond, Dylan snatched the phone from my hand and answered lazily, "Hey bro, she doesn't need a step down. You can go enjoy your time with your precious Janice. I'll take good care of Ren." There was a beat of silence on the other end before Zach exploded with a string of curses. Dylan calmly hung up the call, then turned to me with a grin and spread his hands. "Your brother sure is touchy. If it were me, the only thing I'd care about is whether you're happy." I rolled my eyes in disbelief. "Stop pretending in front of me." His smile slowly faded. He stared directly at me, reached out, and gently pinched my chin. Then he leaned down and kissed me again, long and deep, until I nearly lost my balance. Only then did he let me go. "From now on, don't think about that guy in front of me," he said. "I get jealous." "Let's go," he added, wrapping his arm around me as we headed for the helicopter. Dylan flew us up to 3,000 meters in the air, soaring over vast mountains and endless ocean. At that moment, my world felt expansive and magnificent, filled with open skies and breathtaking landscapes. There was no more drama weighing on my heart. I felt free, refreshed, completely at peace. Maybe I should have done this a long time ago. I shouldn't have let myself get tangled up in love. These past years had drained me, body and soul. I had no energy left to care anymore. Dylan Ford lived up to his reputation as the most playful, flirtatious young master of the Foster family. We stayed abroad for half a month before returning home, doing something new and thrilling every single day: gliding, surfing, skydiving. For the first time, I realized my world didn't have to revolve around work, Zach Foster, or some ridiculous love triangle. As I plummeted through the sky, wind roaring past my ears, my heart leapt into my throat. But strangely, I felt a surge of life, wild, untamed, and real. After being stuck in the pressure and routine for so long, this was like breaking free. Romance and betrayal suddenly felt so small and insignificant. Let those dramatic love triangles go to hell. I threw my arms wide open and embraced the vastness of the world. When we landed and my feet touched solid ground again, I felt my soul slowly returning to my body. It was as if something had sprouted inside me, a new seed, quietly growing. Dylan helped me take off my goggles, then gently brushed back my messy hair. "You didn't cry?" he asked, feigning surprise. I joked, "What, all the other girls you brought here cried?" He sighed dramatically. "You think so little of me." "You're the first," he said, his voice shifting to something more serious, "and the only one who cried on my shoulder until her clothes were soaked." I froze, and a memory came flooding back. It was years ago. I had walked in on Zach Foster kissing Janice White, who had just returned from abroad. They were tucked away in a quiet hallway, kissing like no one else existed. I turned to leave and ran straight into Dylan. He glanced at them, then calmly looked back at me. My tears fell immediately. Caught off guard, he held me tight and let me cry. Back then, he had asked me, puzzled, "What's so great about Zach Foster?" And I didn't know how to answer. Who could really explain why we fall for someone? Maybe it was because he was the older boy who'd always taken care of me when I was young. Or maybe it was because he stood out from the crowd with such confidence and charm. In that moment, something in me responded to him, and that feeling went on to shape my entire youth. My happiness and heartbreak were all tied to him. But the Zach Foster of today was no longer the boy I had once loved. I snapped out of the memory and smacked Dylan in mock annoyance. "Stop bringing that up." He winced dramatically and let out a pained cry, but then his usual carefree grin faded. He grew uncharacteristically serious, reached out his hand to me, and said, "All right, adventure time is over. Miss Wynne, from today on, begin your new life." I looked at him. The sunlight cast a golden glow around him, and for the first time, I saw what a new life could really look like. Reaching out to me with open arms, I took a deep breath and smiled. All right. Word had it that Zach Foster had been looking for me everywhere. He'd even gone to my house several times, only to be kicked out by my grandfather each time. My grandfather had never liked how I used to chase after Zach. Now, with things turned around, he was thrilled. Zach was beaten so badly by his grandfather that he was covered in bruises and left kneeling at home for 3 days. Eventually, the old man gave him one last chance to see if he could win me back. Same story, same script. I used to love him, so I'd forgive him every time. But not this time. Even if he knelt to death, I wouldn't spare him a single glance. When Dylan drove me home, we were laughing and chatting when a dark shadow suddenly dashed out. Zach had caught sight of me hugging his cousin goodbye. His face twisted with rage. He charged at Dylan and punched him square in the face, shouting, eyes red with fury, "Do you have no shame? You can hit on anyone you want, but not her. She's your sister-in-law. What's the difference between you and a homewrecker?" I instinctively stepped in front of Dylan to protect him. "Are you okay?" I asked. Dylan straightened up, touched his forehead, then gently ruffled my hair. "Go wait over there, be good," he whispered soothingly. Then he wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, lowered his head slightly, and without hesitation, landed a clean punch right back at Zach, fast and brutal. Zach staggered and fell hard to the ground. Dylan grabbed him by the collar, slammed him against the wall, and slowly raised his sharp, fox-like eyes. He curled his lips into a wicked smile. "Why are you yelling at me, bro? If Ren didn't like me, would I even have the chance to be the third wheel? If you think I'm wrong for being the other man, then why don't you just give her to me? Then I won't be the third wheel anymore. Being the other guy is just one way I prove how irresistible I am. Besides, Ren chose me. So who's the side piece now, huh? You are. That's hilarious." Dylan's delivery had that polished, sharp-tongued drama straight out of a soap opera. I had no idea where he learned it, but it was so over the top that I practically wanted to crawl into a hole. But hey, at least this time, Zach could finally recognize what a manipulative green tea girl Janice really was. His pupils were wide with disbelief. He knew what kind of person his brother was, but he didn't realize he could be this shameless. Fuming, Zach Foster flipped Dylan over and climbed on top of him, fist raised, ready to give his brother a real beating. I acted on instinct. Without even thinking, I swung my purse and slammed it right into Zach, knocking him to the ground. He clutched his head, groaning in pain, and took a long time to get up. Zach stared at me in utter disbelief, unable to recover from the shock. "Ren, you actually hit me? For him?" Off to the side, Dylan had tumbled into a flower bed and was lying there with a dramatically wronged expression. "Sis," he said pitifully, "did you see how rough he is? My head hurts. I need a kiss to get up." Zach's veins bulged with rage at Dylan's sickly sweet tone. He stormed toward me, ignoring everything else, and yanked me back. "Don't touch him," he barked. "If you so much as try to help him, Ren win. Don't blame me for what happens." I ignored him completely and reached out to help Dylan to his feet. Dylan leaned on me with exaggerated weakness and threw Zach a smug, taunting look. "Wow, bro, you're really something. You won't even let your ex help someone up? Good thing she didn't choose you. A petty man like you would have driven her crazy." Zach's fists clenched so tightly they trembled. He pointed at Dylan, cursing loudly. "He's faking it and you still believe him? Ren, are you really that desperate for love? You'll take whoever comes along?" Before he could finish, I slapped him across the face. I had been holding that in for a long time. Smirking coldly, I looked him straight in the eye. "Not just anyone will do. For example, you absolutely won't. Zach Foster, did you really think I couldn't live without you? Let me be clear. I am with your brother now." I boldly took Dylan's hand and let Zach see it with his own eyes. "Now get lost." Zach refused to believe it. He was convinced Dylan had seduced me and insisted I open my eyes to the truth. I had no interest in arguing. I called for the bodyguards at the gate. "Someone come get this stray dog out of here." Dylan squeezed my hand in response, glanced toward his brother, and smiled pleasantly. "It's freezing out here, bro. Ren and I are going home now. You should too. Wouldn't want you catching a cold. No one's going to feel sorry for you." Held back by the guards, Zach completely lost it. He howled profanities, then turned and kicked one of the stone lion statues in front of my house. But instead of making a statement, he hurt himself, grabbing his foot and squatting there for ages, too pained to stand up. From that day forward, the point person for our collaboration with Foster Enterprises shifted from Zach to Dylan. I made the call personally. Old Mr. Foster saw how determined I was to cut ties with Zach and had no choice but to agree. After all, back when Foster Enterprises was struggling, my family poured in enormous resources to keep them afloat. Mr. Foster still had to take my opinion seriously. With the switch, everything started to run more smoothly. When I worked with Zach, he constantly shot down my ideas without even trying. He'd say things were impossible before we even began, and if we did manage to get something done, it always fell far short of expectations. His subordinates treated me with no respect at all. We had endless fights about it. Dylan, on the other hand, didn't use any of Zach's original team. He quickly assembled a new group, experienced, reliable people who jumped right into the work. I was thoroughly impressed. His vision and decision-making were far beyond what I had imagined. He could spot problems in the project at a glance. It made me realize I had seriously underestimated him. I used to think he was useless. He must have noticed me staring, because he lifted his eyes and grinned. "Told you, I wasn't going to let you regret it." I folded my arms, letting him see my interest. "Let's see if you can keep that promise." We finalized our next steps, but just as we were about to move forward, a commotion erupted outside. Zach Foster had forced his way past the security guards and barged into my company's conference room, furious. He slammed a folder down in front of me, so hard it nearly hit my face. At the last second, Dylan Ford threw out his arm and shielded me, but the edge still cut into his forearm. Blood welled up on the spot, and he winced sharply. Zach Foster launched into a tirade. "Ren, are you out of your damn mind? I'm the project lead. When will you finally learn to separate business from your personal life?" I ignored him. I grabbed Dylan's injured arm and called for my assistant to bring disinfectant and bandages. Then I calmly looked at Zach, who was acting like a rabid dog, and said coldly, "Well, you're not the project lead anymore." Some people clearly still hadn't gotten the message. I decided to remind Mr. Foster one more time. From start to finish, the core of this project has always been Win Corp, not Foster Enterprises, and certainly not you. If there's nothing else, kindly see yourself out and close the door on your way. For a moment, Zach looked stunned. He finally realized I was the client, the one with the power to change teams. But he wasn't willing to admit defeat just yet. Frowning, he scrambled to shift the blame onto me. All this because I went to check on Janice? Are you seriously blowing it out of proportion? She's not in good health. I promised her mother I'd take care of her. Why do you always overthink things? You've got money, family, love, and me. Why can't I even show her a little kindness? His shameless excuses disgusted me. Every time I heard him talk like this, it made my skin crawl. I stared at his hypocritical face and gave a cold laugh. What would you say even if I caught you two lying in bed together? You'd claim you were just talking under the covers? And let's be real, if it weren't for you, Janice wouldn't even qualify to know me. Whether she lives or dies has nothing to do with me. Zach Foster, who do you think you are? Do you really think you're worth fighting over? If you can't give me your undivided love, then get the hell out of my life. He stood frozen, stunned. After all, I used to fall into his traps so easily, always rushing to prove I wasn't jealous of Janice. But now, the indifference in my tone left him completely lost for words. That's when Dylan, ever the opportunist, leaned against my shoulder and sighed dramatically. Sis, ever since my brother hit me a few days ago, I've still been feeling unwell. I was only trying to care for you quietly. I don't know why he's overreacting. Of course, Dylan knew exactly how to provoke his brother. Zach's rage reignited. He took a step forward, not to hit me because he wouldn't dare, but to hit Dylan, his shameless little brother. But before he could land a punch, my security guards, who I'd called ahead of time, stepped in and blocked him. I don't want unauthorized personnel barging in anymore, I said. The guards immediately escorted Zach out. It was the first time that the high and mighty Zach Foster had been kicked out in front of so many people. Humiliated, he lashed out one last time as he was dragged away. Ren, remember this. No matter what happens, Foster Enterprises will never fall into the hands of an outsider. I gave you the chance to become Mrs. Foster. You were the one who turned it down. Don't come crawling back when you regret it. I didn't care in the slightest. I closed the door behind him and turned back to the room. Let's continue the meeting. As for who ends up regretting this, we'll see. After that, Zach tried to sabotage our project from behind the scenes. But Dylan effortlessly handled every single problem. The Foster staff, who were usually arrogant and dismissive, surprisingly fell in line under Dylan's leadership. I started to suspect there was more to him than I realized. Maybe he'd just been playing dumb all along, hiding sharp claws behind a lazy grin. He really was something else. Dylan, how many more surprises are you hiding from me? I thought to myself. With Zach out of the picture, our partnership with Foster Enterprises finally gained traction. The previous manager, Zach, had spent more time chasing after Janice than actually doing his job. His team constantly pushed back or passed the blame around. Now, things were different. After months of relentless effort, our wellness herbal tea product officially launched. Our marketing team targeted young consumers and played up the product's health benefits. With the right internet strategy, we turned it into a viral sensation. In that first month, we hit over $1 billion in revenue. The response was explosive. Both my grandfather and old Mr. Foster attended our celebration banquet. They praised us young people for our bold ideas and execution, saying it was finally time to trust the next generation to take over. Zach Foster, on the other hand, used the excuse of being unwell and didn't show up. I heard that in private. He was so furious he trashed his entire office. He never imagined the project he had looked down on would explode with such success. The upper management at Win Corp stopped underestimating me just because I was a woman. They stopped calling me Little Miss and started addressing me respectfully as President Win. Their attitudes changed completely. During the celebration, Dylan Ford raised a glass to me. I smiled and toasted back, then invited him to stick around, because the best part was still to come. I wasn't the type to make empty promises. When I said I'd help him take over Foster Enterprises, I meant every word. He clinked glasses with me and nodded. I've always believed in smart women. Zach had tried multiple times to sabotage our partnership and failed. Meanwhile, his own work was falling apart. He spent all day wrapped up in his romance with his precious Janice. Every time she acted up, he'd rush home to comfort her, leaving huge holes in his responsibilities. A few of them were so serious they almost caused major losses. Old Mr. Foster didn't say anything, so Zach assumed he was still safe. After all, he believed he was the only rightful heir to Foster Enterprises, the eldest grandson, the future leader. In his mind, no matter how much Dylan achieved, he would never measure up. Watching his pathetic drama from the sidelines, I couldn't help but sneer. I was genuinely relieved that I had woken up in time and avoided being dragged down by such an arrogant, brainless man. After everything that happened, I realized I didn't need love as much as I needed someone who shared my vision. Someone who would stand beside me in the trenches, building something real. At that moment, I looked across the room at Dylan Ford, casually raising a glass and chatting with the business elites at the gala. Maybe, just maybe, this mistake of a partnership could turn into something worthwhile. Old Mr. Foster's 80th birthday banquet was a grand event. The venue was packed with luxury cars, and influential figures from all industries had come to pay their respects. Everyone dressed to the nines, men in sharp suits, women in elegant gowns, and lined up with their expensive gifts. His son was useless, and his grandson was off playing house. At 80 years old, the old man still hadn't officially retired. Rumor had it that tonight's birthday banquet was when he would finally announce his successor. In the past, I had attended with Zach. This time, I walked in with Dylan. Our arrival caused quite a stir. The whole engagement switcheroo had spread far and wide by now. Zach and Janice arrived a few minutes after us. She was all dolled up in a striking red dress, with her hair swept up in an elaborate style. Anyone who didn't know better might have thought she was the guest of honor tonight. Clinging to Zach's arm, she beamed at me smugly. She was clearly waiting for old Mr. Foster to name Zach the successor so she could rub it in my face. All eyes turned toward us, eager to witness a front-row showdown. Janice couldn't resist the urge to stir the pot. She glanced at Dylan, then said, "Miss Wynne, seems like your feelings for Zach didn't run very deep, huh? Didn't take you long to move on." Before I could even respond, Dylan beat me to it. He swirled his red wine lazily, gave her a flat look, and fired back with that trademark nonchalant tone. "Oh, Janice White is still alive? Didn't they already issue a critical condition notice? Guess that doctor was a quack. Better find a different hospital next time." "And what, my brother didn't give you any money? Had to show up in a knockoff dress?" Janice had clearly picked the wrong target. She didn't know Dylan never held back. He didn't care about your age, your gender, or your status. He'd verbally roast a barking dog until it whimpered away with its tail between its legs. Her face turned red, her neck strained, but since what he said was true, she didn't dare argue too loudly. She turned to Zach with her best pitiful expression. "Zach, I didn't. You know me." Janice had been mooching off Zach for years, and yet she still refused to spend money on a real dress. She used to show up at events wearing knockoff versions of my outfits just to compete with me. Zach, trying to save face, would say my dress didn't look good and urge me to wear something else. This time was no different. Zach pulled her protectively into his arms, glared at us, and snapped, "Dylan, that's enough. Watch your mouth." He stepped in front of us, demanding an apology. "It's one thing to insult me, but don't bully Janice. You owe her an apology, both of you." Dylan and I exchanged a glance, like we'd just heard the funniest joke in the world. My red lips curled into a cold smile. "The dead don't deserve respect, and neither do you, Zach." Zach Foster instantly snapped. In an attempt to save face, he grabbed my arm and threatened me. "Ren Wynne, if you don't apologize today, the moment I become chairman, I'll cancel all cooperation with Wynne Corp." Before he could finish, I spun around and kicked him hard in the knee. He'd injured that leg before, so he dropped to the floor with a loud thud, half kneeling behind me. Janice, standing next to him, gasped and instinctively shielded her stomach. All the onlookers held their breath, covering their mouths and whispering. "So this is the Ren Wynne everyone said was obsessed with Zach Foster? If it weren't for all these people here, I swear she would have killed him." I knew it. There's no way a real heiress like her would ever fall for someone like him. I pulled my leg back and gave Zach and Janice a sweet smile. I'll be waiting to see how this plays out. Then I linked arms with Dylan Ford and walked off, leaving them behind. Dylan leaned close and murmured with a smirk, "So cool, sis." I raised my glass to clink his. "Next time, don't test me. It won't end nearly as gently." Since it was old Mr. Foster's birthday, Zach didn't dare make a scene. He looked around at the crowd, and in the end, could only swallow his anger. Later that evening, a celebrity took the stage to sing in celebration. Not wanting to miss her moment, Janice got up too and performed a song for the old man. Word had it she was pregnant, and the two of them were hoping this public gesture would win over Mr. Foster, betting that giving him a great-grandchild would soften his heart. Their plan was clear. Charm the old man, get him to approve the marriage, and name Zach as the official successor. But old Mr. Foster barely glanced at them before his face turned cold. "Is there no proper stage outside for you to perform on? Is it you who doesn't know the occasion? Or Zach Foster?" Though his voice wasn't loud, the authority in it was undeniable. The event staff immediately picked up on his meaning. They adjusted the program and escorted Janice off stage mid-performance. She glanced in my direction, assuming I had spoken ill of her to the old man. Her eyes burned with resentment as she shot me a look filled with hatred, then turned to Zach, playing the victim and clinging to him. Zach didn't dare disobey his grandfather and quietly asked her to step down, promising to bring her over to greet the old man later. When it was our turn to present birthday wishes, Dylan spoke with his usual charm, coaxing a wide smile from old Mr. Foster. The old man looked at us with satisfaction and nodded. "If this boy ever dares to bully you, I'll back you up." I smiled. "He won't. Whether it's in work or in life, we get along just fine." The old man lifted his cloudy eyes and stared at Dylan, as if seeing a reflection of his long-lost daughter. When it came time for Zach and Janice to approach, Mr. Foster stood up and said, "I'm tired. No need for outsiders." Then he looked at Dylan. "You handle the guests, will you? I'm going to rest." Just as he turned to leave, he paused and glanced back at Zach. "I heard Miss White isn't in great health, and you've been running between home and the company to take care of her. Since that's the case, Zach, take some time off, stay home, and look after her." Zach's face darkened on the spot. Janice looked equally uncomfortable, clinging to his arm in confusion. Once upon a time, Zach was the old man's favorite grandson. He believed they were the true Foster family. He thought that by bringing a great-grandchild into the picture, he could win back the old man's heart and secure his place as successor. But now it was painfully clear where the old man stood. As Mr. Foster turned everything over to Dylan, his simple instruction to handle the guests was essentially a public declaration of who would lead Foster Enterprises in the future. Zach looked over at me and Dylan. His face twisted with barely restrained hatred. I met his gaze, raising my chin in defiance. Hadn't I told him before? The successor would be whoever I chose. Zach always assumed Foster Enterprises had outgrown its dependence on WinCorp and never took us seriously again. But what he didn't know was that back then, my grandfather had only agreed to help the Foster family on one condition: that I, Ren Win, would personally choose the next successor. This morning, my grandfather had already had a private talk with old Mr. Foster, warning him not to make a foolish mistake in his old age. The old man may no longer be involved in daily operations, but I was certain he knew exactly what had been happening within the company. And for the long-term future of Foster Enterprises, he would make the right call. Zach Foster was officially removed from the company's headquarters. Old Mr. Foster said his decision-making was too reckless, and told him to spend a few years gaining experience at lower-level branches before returning. His original position was handed over to Dylan Ford. Once Dylan took the reins, he began systematically dismantling Zach's influence. Negative news started surfacing about all the projects Zach had previously overseen. Even the car accident that had killed Dylan's parents was dragged back into the spotlight. Years ago, the youngest daughter of the Foster family had made a name for herself in the business world, and was widely seen as the next in line to inherit the family empire. But a sudden car crash had taken both her and her husband's lives, leaving behind their only son, Dylan. There had always been rumors that their deaths weren't just an accident. Some even speculated that Zach's parents were behind it. After all, they were ordinary and unremarkable, with no real ability to stand out. If they didn't eliminate the sister, they'd always be stuck in her shadow. My grandfather had suspected foul play back then, but chose not to make any public accusations. Still, his attitude toward Zach's father spoke volumes. I couldn't help but feel a growing unease. One evening, over dinner, I warned Dylan not to be too hasty. Zach's family, they're more dangerous than ghosts, but Dylan just smiled and brushed it off. Are you worried about me? Even in a situation like this, he still had the nerve to tease. I pretended to be annoyed, and he chuckled softly, lips curling into that familiar grin. I'm really glad you care about me. In the background, a violinist began to play. Dylan stood and extended a hand toward me. Miss Wynne, may I have this dance? His eyes sparkled with humor and something deeper, more serious. He was as gentlemanly and graceful as ever, just like back then. It reminded me of a charity gala years ago, where Zach had humiliated me by choosing to dance with Janice in front of everyone. That night, it was Dylan who stepped in to save my pride. Wearing a classic tailcoat, standing tall and handsome, he had offered me his hand with a soft smile and invited me to dance. That evening, he stole the spotlight from Janice and brought me back into the center of attention. I wasn't very good at dancing, but he had guided me gently, helping me relax, encouraging me to trust him. It was the first time I felt truly light, genuinely happy. My smile that night had been brighter than usual. I still remember how he leaned down slightly and asked, "Was it worth it?" I had stubbornly replied, "None of your business, don't meddle." That's why for years after, he always watched my entanglement with Zach with that same half-smiling expression. Now, swaying in his arms once more with his nose nearly brushing mine, he said softly, "Have you ever considered that maybe I liked you back then?" Then he paused and shook his head. "No, even earlier. Do you remember the first time we met?" A wave of childhood memories rushed over me. The first time I met him was right after he returned to the foster family. Some kids from another family were bullying him, mocking him for not having parents. I understood that helplessness. I had lost mine too, so I stepped up and chased them off. My grandfather had punished me for fighting, smacking my palms. The moment I remembered, my eyes widened. Was this the classic suspension bridge effect? But we were just little kids back then. The music softened. And that's when he kissed me, gently but deeply. "Miss Wynne," he murmured, "it really did take you a long time to look back, but that's okay, I waited." Only then did my face flush, heat rushing up before I could stop it. Later, while I was working, my left eyelid started twitching. Something felt off, like something terrible was about to happen. A phone call popped up on my screen. When I answered, someone on the other end said that Dylan Ford had been in a car accident. He was in the hospital. Was history repeating itself? Knowing what kind of petty, vindictive person Zach Foster was, I wouldn't put anything past him. My knees nearly buckled. I grabbed my keys and rushed out of the office, racing to the hospital. He couldn't be gone. He couldn't. Just as I arrived, I saw a stretcher being wheeled by, covered in a white sheet. A police officer approached the doctor and whispered something. My heart dropped into my stomach. I just knew. Dylan had been hurt. I ran toward the stretcher, panic tightening around my chest, tears blurring my vision. All I could think about were the quiet moments I'd shared with him these past few days. He was the one who pulled me on stage to save me. He was the one who flew me above the clouds. He was the one who provoked my ex just to cheer me up. I didn't know how long I had been crying, lost in grief, when I suddenly felt a tap on my shoulder. Covered in tears and snot, I turned around and there he was, a light scratch on his forehead, hands in his pockets, smirking at me. "Who are you crying for?" he asked. "If it's your ex, I might get jealous." That infuriating smirk was back on his face again. I ran straight into his arms and he hugged me tightly. He was okay. This guy who raced cars for fun had once again walked away from disaster. But the people behind the accident weren't getting off that easily. It turned out Dylan had already had the would-be assassins arrested and turned over to the police. He had been baiting Zach Foster's faction for days, squeezing their influence, pushing them to panic, just to force them to expose themselves. And sure enough, they snapped. Afraid the truth about the murder of Dylan's parents years ago would come to light, they resorted to the same dirty tricks again. This time, it was the car crash. Zach's father, along with Zach himself, was taken in for questioning. At first, they denied everything, but in the face of overwhelming evidence, they finally caved. Janice, seeing Zach in trouble, panicked. She got rid of the baby overnight and tried to flee the country. But the police stopped her at the airport. Someone had reported her for fraud, and it turned out all the money she'd been hoarding was part of her escape plan. She admitted it without shame. She never loved anyone. She only ever loved money. After crying myself out, something suddenly dawned on me. I turned to Dylan. Back then, when you agreed to help me, did you already plan to use me? He wiped my tears and shook his head gently. No. Taking over Foster Enterprises had been my plan for years, he said softly. I've been preparing for this for 5 years. Didn't you notice? Most of Foster already belongs to me. So even if you had chosen him, I still had ways to bring him down. I had noticed. People listened to him more than they listened to Zach. His voice was soft, like he was handling something precious. I was going to wait until I secured the position before stealing you away from his side. But in the end, heaven helped me out, and brought you back to me early. He pulled me into his arms again, holding me tight and kissed me gently on the forehead. That night, after my shower, I lay down in bed. Dylan leaned against the doorframe, tilted his head, and asked playfully, "Miss Wynne, are you sure you're in the right room?" I glared at him and threw back the covers, ready to leave, but he crossed the room in a few quick steps and grabbed my wrist, holding me in place. He leaned in close, his breath tinged with a faint minty scent that wrapped around me. Closing his eyes, he kissed me. "This sort of thing," he whispered, "should come from me. Ren," he murmured against my lips, "I'll make sure you're happy." I wrapped my arms around his neck and kissed him back, telling him, through action, that I was willing. The warmth of his palm pressed against my skin, sending shivers through me and making my heart race wildly, and I whispered to him, "I am happy."